and this technical requirement.
If you're watching this in 2070, flick us a message as to what formations are going, and
I'll kick it off. Red mate.
Red mate.
This is Red mate.
And this is Chris.
This is and.
Yeah. All right, go.
Today we're going to be doing a video on formations. In particular, has 4-4-2 kind of died or gone out of the game a little bit? More and more progressively, we're starting to see those teams play 4-3-3 or an equivalent of such, like a 3-5-2. So yeah, just having a bit of a discussion around will we kind of ever see a 4-4-2 in the game again?
Just like hearing 4-4-2, it seems like so old school. Like it feels like everyone in every league, every country was just always doing 4-4-2s, and that was just like the default. And even when you see people doing like best ever Premier League teams, it's now everyone was playing 4-4-2, but now we need to try and get these 4-4-2 players into a more modern system. But yeah, it definitely feels like there's been a transition. I think 4-3-3 is now the standard formation. For starters, you don't see like two strikers anymore. Famously now, this transfer window, City have just signed Haaland, Liverpool signed Nunez, Barca have got a Lewandowski, you got a Benzema, you got these number 9s, and there's no more partnerships. Back in the day, you used to have a big guy and a little guy, or someone quick, someone to knock the ball on, like Heskey and Owen. But yeah, it feels like all the best players now are either wingers or you'll just have the one player up front.
A big part of that probably has come from this need for that like possession style of football, and with that, like a 3-man midfield. I think that's dictated a lot with people needing those ball players, but then that overloaded midfield. If you go for like a 4-4-2, you're often playing with those 2 midfielders against a 3.
You'll get killed in the midfield.
Inevitably, you're going to get destroyed. So I think it's all kind of, for me anyway, it's kind of stemmed from that Cruyff or that Barcelona Ajax way of thinking of like, okay, we're going to have the ball, our midfield's going to be dominant in possession, and then our forward players, we're going to have 3 creative players who can kind of cut in and do all the rest. Obviously that Messi kind of, with the Barcelona style being that false 9 of just picking up the ball, the wide players coming in, has really kind of been a trailblazer for that formation. And I think now that's almost stuck in people's heads so much of like, well, if we play with a 2 or if we don't have 3 in midfield, we're going to be at a disadvantage. Even something like a 3-5-2 or any variation of that, a 3-4-3 or whatever you want to call it, still kind of focuses on that midfield overload and having additional players. Even if it is, playing with a 3-4-3 or something, you often get those players kind of coming in and creating like that box formation in the middle to overload. So now we've got 4 players in the middle versus their 3. So it's all about that midfield dominance. And I feel like with 4-4-2, we've definitely kind of gone away from that style of play of like your best 11 will beat our best 11 and just let them go at it with a 4-4-2 of sort of, that 90s, early 2000s Premier League teams that we often saw to now, okay, how can our tactics and how can our game plan beat yours irrespective of your player's ability?
Yeah, I think the 4-3-3 is definitely more of a thought-through system, and it's a lot more about possession. Even when I've played like a 2-man midfield versus a 3-man, you definitely notice if you've either got a player more or you're a player down, like when we've played like maybe a 4-4-2 against a 3-man midfield. And even like having like fullbacks these days, they also get so far forward. They're now kind of doing a job of an old school winger as well as the defensive duties. They're now doing both. And these wingers who are just playing in like a midfield, like a left mid and a right mid, they're almost redundant now. And so when you're playing, it almost makes sense. You're like, oh, you guys are like not really doing anything. We're better off taking at least one of you in the midfield. Because that's where a game is going to probably be won and lost. The old English way of like bombing it long and getting up, it makes sense to have 2 strikers and a few more players up there when you're playing that way. But now it's like, okay, we're playing out from the back now and we're holding the ball a lot more. And now it's so much more crucial to have players in the middle. And I think, again, like the modern day striker, you obviously still have a striker, but now these guys are expected to do a lot more. The likes of Haaland, he's big, he's strong, and he's quick. And he's playing in this Man City team, which are famously so technical and keep the ball, and he's now needing to pass it and literally do everything. It's not like, this guy is not like the great on the ball, but he's great in the air. So, put a cross in, and then you can almost subsidise that with a partner who might be a bit smaller and a bit quicker and is better with his feet, but then, he's not going to get on the end of the ball. But it's interesting when you mention like those Dutch teams, and I think the 4-3-3 first started coming in like the 70s, which is like 50 years ago, and it's almost taken like 50 years for that to become the norm. And I guess like the top teams in world football are now doing the 4-3-3, and then everyone's just kind of got to follow that lead. And like you said, if you're playing a 4-4-2 against a 4-3-3, I think you're probably just going to get killed. Like, you're definitely not going to be able to keep the ball.
I think it's what are you using that 4-4-2 formation for? Because it's definitely not going to be a possession style of football or an outcome style that leads to possession. Probably the most notable 4-4-2 in recent memory was Leicester winning the league.
Yeah,
where they're
but that
sort
was
of
very
playing
long
with,
ball. Like,
but I was just about to say, where it was very much two banks of four, solid play and structure, routine. Each player knew when they were allowed to go, where they had to fall back into. And it was kind of that Okazaki, kind of playing as that maybe a 10, but pushing forward to allow that Jamie Vardy sort of to go, always be on the shoulder of the last defender. It's going to hit on the counter. Then notably, obviously, Atletico Madrid in Spain. Again, Diego Simeone having that structure, that routine of like the fullbacks are tight in, compact. The midfielders not really being too adventurous and staying in front of that back four, and then having those forward players who have that bit of freedom to maybe one stay on the shoulder and then the other one kind of come in, is really the only two standouts that have had success at the highest level. Like, what is the cost to playing at that formation? And for both of those teams, it's definitely ball possession.
Neither of them are playing
Neither have got
possession.
much. And then like their style of football or the football on the eye is, you would say, neither played football where you're like, wow. I think Leicester's story was like they had that Jamie Vardy, just counter-attack. How many times did like Mahrez play this ball over the top or whoever it was, and you're just like, oh my God, like how is Jamie Vardy on the end of that again, or this and that. But as a whole spectacle, you wouldn't say it was amazing to watch. And the same with Atletico Madrid. Like, they're renowned for being horrible to play against and horrible to watch. So their outcome of winning the league titles in their respective leagues came at the cost of appreciation and respect.
I think both of those teams are like very defensive, which is basically what we've said already in regards to not having possession. So like, yeah, they've got such a tight defense, and Leicester in that season that they won, how many 1-0 wins do they have? Yeah. So not only have they got a solid defense, they've got everyone sitting back, keeping it tight, and then they're just scoring from, like you said, bomb it long to Vardy. He's got so much pace, he'll get on the end of it, score a goal, and that'll win. And then the Atletico is the exact same, where they're just like so hard to score against, hard to play against, and no one's there going, oh, they just pass it round you. You don't get near them. It's the opposite, where you probably will have all the ball and they've just got 11 men behind it, and you can't play through them. To go off what you've said, like, you can get some success, but it's like, oh, we saw Leicester do this 6-7 years ago. We saw this team do it, and they're the outlier. And again, like anything a team does that's a little bit different can be successful, but you need all the right players, you need the right manager, you need everything going for you to play that 4-4-2, because if you've not got the ball and you're playing this defensive style, you're kind of asking a lot to then go and win a game and then consecutively win and then kind of win a trophy or any kind of cup competition.
I think also building on that is the 4-3-3 or 3-5-2 or whatever allows for that one or two sort of flair players or one or two players where you might be like, okay, we'll do a bit more work for them. Whereas a 4-4-2 now, that Leicester team, they didn't carry a single person, and they just had workers and people willing to put in that shift.
Yeah.
Straight away come to mind like a Cristiano Ronaldo or a Coutinho or, players of that sort of ilk, where you're like, okay, we might do a little bit of his running, or he might be able to sit up high or, sit in the pocket here and it'll be okay. Whereas in a 4-4-2, right now, if you put this current Cristiano Ronaldo in a 4-4-2, where are you going to play him? You play him up front as a 2, like, is he going to work well in a pair? All these questions start coming, like a Coutinho, where are you going to play him?
Yeah.
Whereas in a 4-3-3, you could be like, okay, we'll play him as a 10 or a...
I think the 10 position in particular has so much luxury that in a 4-3-3 system, you can put the 10 in and you can go, this guy is not the greatest defensively or whatever, but if you get the ball to him, he can make something happen.
Like a Mesut Ozil or something like that.
Yeah, he's got like a bit of a spark. And then he's got the luxury of, you can then go, okay, we're just going to have 2 midfielders sitting behind him and they can just sit and defend. Whereas, if you've got like a 2-man midfield, you definitely need them coming and going or whatever. And then they work so hard and they're a partnership as well. And there's so many partnerships over the field, whereas the 4-3-3 definitely feels a lot more like a fluid system. And like you said, in terms of having a strategy on the ball, it allows for those creative players to get into different spaces and create different attacks.
Yeah, it is a funny one. Like now, obviously, I very much grew up probably similar to yourself, where 4-4-2, that was just it. Like, And I sometimes think, like, how did nobody ever think to try something different? You know, the age-old debate of, like, Gerrard, Scholes, Lampard, like, which two are you going to play in the midfield? It's just like, how come nobody ever thought, why don't we try and get all three in there at the same time?
We can only go two.
Yeah.
So where's the third going?
Yeah.
Gonna go in goal or left back, up front?
On the wing.
We cannot have three in midfield.
Yeah, but now it just seems so obvious
to
just play a three. The tactical flexibility and all the rest that comes with that. So I guess the kind of the question or the interesting thing is, what's next? Where do we go from here? Where we're just like, you know, why didn't we ever think to play 7 at the back? You know what I mean? Like, where is going to be that next thing where we're just like, how did we not think of this? Or how did 4-3-3 get played between 2011, 12 sort of onwards, but across the board until X date, until that new formation came along, or now the evolution of football? What's it going to be?
It's going to be in the similar direction in terms of possession. I feel like, you know, modern days keepers are now expected to be so good on the ball. They're playing out from the back now, and it's almost like you notice a team with a good keeper, the likes of City or Liverpool, where the keeper can push up a bit more and they're almost involved in the possession game. And if that's going to help you move a ball around and open up space somewhere else on the pitch, that's so evident. Like Pep Guardiola, who's obviously had so much success, you know, the first thing he did was get rid of Joe Hart, bring in Bravo, realise, oh no, actually he's not cutting it either, I'm going to have to get another keeper in. So yeah, that's just a bit of a prediction from my half when you say, like, where's it going to go? I think these keepers are going to get even more involved on the ball. But at the same time, it probably will take ages. Like I said, you know, a 4-3-3, probably we first saw it in the 70s, it's now 50 years later, and now it's, you know, you'd say it's the norm. We might start seeing, oh, this team's trialling this, a few clubs, oh, this team in this league and this country's doing this. But, you know, until that becomes the default, it could be another 50 years.
Yeah. Could we see a 4-4-2 make a bit of a return, kind of on the flip side now, where we're making such amazing athletes and such amazing professionals, whereby these players are capable of doing running stats that we never thought possible, where they're doing high-speed sprints? We look at like a Haaland who can boss 2 centre-backs by himself, you know, so physical, so dominant. What about we stick another striker up there with him and then they got no chance?
Yeah.
We'll gamble on our 2 midfield players being 2 solid runners, doing all of the leg work. We maybe have an overload on one side where our left wing is a bit of a flair player and our right wing can tuck in. So we have a bit of a balance between those two. So now we have that almost the opposite element of where possession base is starting to go out and maybe physicality and athletes take that center stage. I think AFL is probably the great example where they continuously have this evolution of teams trying to play good like football and then teams having the best athletes doing all the running stats, you know, clocking high kilometers, good interchange and all this kind of thing. Not obviously trying to compare both codes, but do we have this evolution now where physical capacity is taking a driving seat over ball ability?
Well, I think I said that from the start in terms of like the Haaland, the Nunes and players like that, even like maybe a Ronaldo of like 3 or 4 years ago, where they can literally do everything. And this is now the expectation. We need this guy to go in there and have every ability. We're going to put a ball in long, he needs to be good in the air. We're going to play it to his feet, he needs to be good with his feet. But yeah, it's an interesting question because you think, you know, if Haaland's this good, imagine finding someone else with all those to match that physical attributes. Put a second striker up there. How's the defense going to deal with that? But then again, like the minute you've got 2 strikers, where are you now taking that? Like, are you playing now back to 2 in the midfield and you're going back to some other system? But yeah, I think in terms of like all sports, the athleticism is progressing, and that's just due to technology and like the science and the research and whatever it is and the professionalism. But I've heard in the championship, you know, the more athletic players and the, like you mentioned with the AFL, those teams can just work so much harder and be more physical and that can get a job done. Whereas if you look at like a Man City team, yes, they have Haaland now, but look at all the other players like a Bernardo Silva, a Phil Foden, a Sterling, a Mahrez. You know, these guys aren't, you know, the pinnacle of athletes. You don't walk past them in the street and think like, this guy's a specimen, but they do have an exceptional amount of technical ability, and that is what's winning them the games. So yeah, it kind of just depends on how the team is playing as a whole. But at the same time, in a season, you will get a team that maybe will win a game against City, and that is just based on the fact that they work so much harder on the day and some things kind of fell for them. But over a season, I think with the small margins of like 1 goal winning the game, I would just kind of still think that the technical abilities, I think in AFL where it's so high scoring, you can just work so hard and just keep going at them and scoring, get the momentum and capitalise. But you know, famously in football in the Premier League, the better team over 90 minutes can lose because of a penalty decision, or, you know, they had 100 chances and none of them went in, and this team had one and it went in. So
yeah, I think we've also gone through that evolution over time. You know, the classic like English mentality of like can't tackle, not big enough, not strong enough, can't head the ball, and we are seeing that progressively go out for more sort of technical players. I mean, probably the best ones like that Andy Robertson kind of getting released by Celtic, I think it was, kind of got told, you know, in maybe not exactly that way, but like your height and your physical stature is going to not allow you to make it to the top. Now he's playing at the top.
But he's definitely, at the same time, he is not the best on the ball. Like, he's not the most technical player. He's probably an example of this guy's just working really hard, and kind of things he is good at, like getting down the wing, putting a cross in, is just perfect for a Jurgen Klopp team. But yeah, I just, like, for me in my head, when I think about like trends and the evolution, I'm like automatically thinking of like these top teams and what they're doing. And a big thing for me right now is probably like Man City, and what are they doing? What place do they have? And I just think that that's now the bar, and everyone else is trying to get up there.
Yep.
You might see like a Leicester doing things differently and getting some success out of that, but, you know, they're a 5,001 at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Like that is not something that we can go, oh, you know, just try something different and that'll work. That's one of the biggest, like the most rarest thing in sport. So
You raise some very good points in that we currently are in this phase of like that one striker up the top doing the job, and this technical requirement from our players to keep that ball, which I think a 4-3-3 works well for in the current game.
Yeah.
Cool. So that was our quick discussion on 4-4-2 and the use within modern day. Will we see a bit of a rise in it? Are we seeing the end of 4-4-2? So yeah, let us know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you get involved, like, subscribe, all the rest of that. What do you reckon, Ant?
Yeah, that's all good, mate. Yeah, let us know if you think that's 4-4-2 is dead, or that's going to come back around.
Give it another 50 years.
50 years we'll be playing.
2070.
Yeah.
We're getting involved.
Yeah, if you're watching this in 2070, flick us a message as to, you know, what formations are going.
Yeah, cool. I think that was red, mate.
Yeah, it was red, mate.
Yeah.